Our next speaker of the day is architect Vatsala Cunha. Our topic for the day is first semester communication skills. It's on page 13 of the document.
I'm Vatsala Cunha and I'm here to present my inputs for a course called 2014 HUM 1.7. My first recommendation is to rename it Architectural Communication 1. Its specific purpose should be to build skills of thinking and communicating architecture without the jargon. It should not be reduced to being a course in language expertise only. There are multiple intents behind architectural communication or dialogue. Number one, to explore design ideas and think them through for oneself, with the emphasis on differentiating ideas or concepts in architecture. For instance, can the traffic congestion on Sankey roads be tackled through redesign of Bangalore's water systems rather than road widening, based on statistical input on automobiles from elements of architecture? For instance, providing colonnades, verandahs, altering FAR proportions of buildings on Sankey Road after widening happens to make it more habitable. Number two, to explain ideas to others in the field of architecture, like fellow students, faculty, other architects and contractors, as in presentations, reviews, conferences, construction sites, etc. Number three, to establish connection with those who inhabit architecture, for instance, clients and governments, and to be able to establish programs for various projects, as well as to be able to explain the design ideas to them. Number four, to dialogue with public at large, to construct an architecture-sensitive public that in turn can demand better architecture. Number five is to facilitate documentation and archiving architecture and its related practices. The objective behind a course in communication for architectural students are the same as any other course: to teach them to become observers, shapers, guardians, and the voice of the built environment. Architectural communication happens in different forms that include: number one, verbal; number two, text-based or written; number three, through drawings, they can be physical or digital; number four, through models, those could also be physical or digital; and number five, which is experiential or immersive, by inhabiting the built works. Although some or all of these forms are used simultaneously for the purpose of the course 2014 HUM 1.7, we will engage with only the first two. Students' limited communication skill is a common enough complaint we hear all the time. Apparently, this limitation severely dents their employability index. Architectural education in India faces a very unique challenge. Students come from varied backgrounds, not just geographical, but also linguistic and cultural. In the current scenario, both the course content and the language of communication, which is often English, ignore this reality. Architectural studios can be a rich mix of ideas and practices of the particular, but borrowed and incongruous course content that is offered not only alienates many students, but also the places they come from do not benefit from their architectural education. To make meaningful connection with all, we have to understand that no matter what the place, whether Bijapur or Tumkur, it always has a particular history and a particular terrain that architecture must engage with. Architecture syllabus, in turn, has to equip students with the skills to engage with this particular of a place, not with the particular preconceived and a prepackaged notion of architecture. To make this shift, we have to acknowledge that even though architectural education in India may officially be in English, access to architecture itself is not through a singular language. All project sites work across a colorful linguistic landscape. Often masons are from Bihar and Tamil Nadu, barbenders are from Orissa, carpenters are from Bengal, floor layers are from Rajasthan, site supervisors from Karnataka, electricians from Kerala. Linguistic diversity is hardly ever an issue. Can architectural studios work in the same spirit? If it's possible in the industry, it should be possible in the studios as well. Thinking is embedded in language, and language comes with its cultural peculiarities. For instance, I doubt if there is a word for design in any of the Indian languages. For that matter, if there is a word for architecture either. If some of you are thinking of Vaastu Kala or Vaastu Shastra or Vaastu Shilp, none of these words come close to the potential that architecture carries today. This is fantastic, because what this means is that we have the freedom to define, mold, shape, and evolve architecture to suit the peculiarities of our terrain, its practices, and importantly, to respond to the issues of our times. To help us prepare a new ground for architecture today, it is extremely important to figure out how, through time, the intent behind architecture shaped its mandate. What got emphasized, but also why and what got sidelined. It calls for looking beyond the iconic monuments as standalone objects and their sweetened documentation portraying the past as a picture-perfect singular outcome. However, architecture students continue to spend enormous amounts of time studying the visual aspects of iconic structures and their elements as if they existed in an architectural vacuum. An appropriate example of this is the classical Greek order of columns. Instead of being a part of history of architecture course, can these be studied in professional practice under bylaws, as these orders strictly control the architecture of an era? Confusing ideas that inform architecture with elements that give architecture its tangible form is rather common. Architectural syllabi need to pay a very close attention to this. This is the issue that a course in architectural communication is set out to address. It is meant to find tools to firstly articulate design ideas within architectural studios by accessing influences other than those from the built form. And secondly, is to establish a dialogue with public to enhance its engagement with architecture. Before communication comes understanding. Often understanding comes with dialogue and deep inquiry. It is easiest to engage students to investigate and inquire deeply about something from a familiar milieu. To them, this would not only be more meaningful, but it will also inculcate a sense of ownership not just of ideas, but also of a place. I do not think that a college-level professional course needs to teach English comprehension and grammar. I believe that it is possible to do architectural thinking in multiple languages. Instead of flattening architecture to fit a single language, we should connect with the multilingual environment that we commonly inhabit. Language itself comes with its cultural particularities, which could enrich and inform our architectural thought. We need to enable students to feel secure in thinking and quarrying their language for ideas that can inform their work. We must not restrict this exercise to literal translations like mane for house and kate for veranda, but work with the spirit of a language. Although architecture as built form does not depend on literacy and it finally speaks through the built environment, there is often a need for verbal or written expression to articulate thoughts for oneself as well as for those who are not familiar with architectural representation, like the clients and policy makers and other peoples in the fields of design. Hence, a course in architectural communication acts as a bridge between ideas and their architectural form. Talking specifically about the course structure, as per the VTU syllabus, the course includes 2 modules per week for 12 weeks. 24 modules of 50 minutes each means in a semester we can have 20 hours of written and verbal architectural dialogue. I propose the course to be taught through a series of self-exploratory exercises. Each week, students can be expected to do 2 assignments, one verbal and the other written. The first one is to be on representation, which they present verbally, draw on an A4 sheet, and speak about it for 2 minutes to the class. The written assignment of 250 to 300 words can be in form of a submission. The representation or verbal presentation assignment should be done in the studio with the guidance of the faculty. The written assignment should be done outside the studio with some field or library research inputs. To manage time, the class should be divided in 2. One half takes representation while the other half tackles writing at any given time. These assignments could cover 5 topics in 9 weeks to start with. As faculty gets accustomed, number of topics can go up to 9. In a semester, each student would present 5 oral and 5 written assignments. Equal marks should be allocated to all the assignments, both verbal and written, to sustain motivation and interest. Module 1 is for the faculty to introduce the structure of the course, clearly define the intent, the topics and materials to be covered. Module 2 is for the class discussion on specific topics and the different routes that one can explore. Module 3 to 21 could have students diagram and present their work in alternate classes. While diagramming, they should make notes for what they will speak about in the class. Module 22 is for a guest speaker from the publishing industry to explain concepts of copyrights, credits, plagiarism, annotations, etc. with photocopied handouts of the same. Module 23 could be a group assignment dedicated to compiling and bringing out a book of the material produced in the class in the previous 10 weeks, complete with annotations, index, footnotes, credits, glossary, etc., based on the inputs from the publisher. Of course, the college must provide appropriate resources for the same as well. In Module 24, a group discussion about the work produced, lessons learned, and feedback to the faculty must take place. Photographs and color printouts should not be allowed. This is to sharpen observation, speech, and written skills. Representation can only be of idea sketches, not literal drawings, like man working in a field cannot be used to represent agriculture. One often sees that in architectural studios. The emphasis should be to shift from literal to representational in observation, speech, as well as text. 5 topics for the assignments could include the exploration of the following. Number 1, edge. Number 2, surface or gradient. Number 3, patterns, systems, infrastructure. Number 4, temporality or movement as in change in time, not in space. Notion of lifespan. And number 5, waste. There is a certain reason why these 5 topics I have put together. We can have maybe a longer discussion on that. The material for research must come from sources other than architecture or the build form. These could include, number 1, literature. 2, maps and drawings. They could be botanical, marine, aeronautical, cartographic, geological, hydrological, climatic, etc. Number 3, textile, clothing, pigments, dyes. Number 4, food, culinary practices. Number 5, music and musical instruments. Number 6, cinema. Number 7, craft practices like basketry, bronzes, pottery, lacquer, glass. Number 8, some other sources. It could be sciences, technology, or iconography. As we are dealing with first-year students here, faculty must come prepared with teaching aids, sample representation, or speech, as well as text exercises. Other exercises could include asking students to speak and write about a current topic from the newspapers about architecture and how architecture and architects can respond to these issues. These topics could include, number 1, architectural response to rotting food grain crisis in the country. Number 2, architects' role in Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Number 3, architectural response to midday meals in schools. Number 4, architectural kits for primary healthcare centers across Karnataka. Number 5, architectural intervention through MNREGA in infrastructure facilities like grain drying platforms, water collection, processing, storage, bazaars and huts to understand temporality. Number 6, garbage segregation and processing facilities, very much in debate in Bangalore currently. Number 7, public facilities like toilets, bus shelters, railway platforms, etc. As long as the topics are from the immediate context, there can be other exercises too. Students can write about the connection between Belgaum, Bijapur, Gulbarga, Bangalore and Mangalore. Apart from the obvious clue, by road and rail, there can be other connections too. The movement of the monsoons, the radio waves, the internet, geological formations, historical, educational, etc. The purpose of this exercise is to look at the familiar and yet find new connections, networks and loops. The format of writing can be flexible. A blog post, a letter to an architectural journal, a newspaper article, a short essay, or even an email to an e-group. This course should also make it evident that the internet companies are not there to conduct research for us. Internet is only one of the sources of raw material for research. We have to quarry other minds too, involve family and friends and friends to turn research also into a community project. Also, professional students need to learn to take nothing for granted, explore deeper, and go beyond the obvious and the trendy. Faculty should constantly compile lists of new topics to explore. They should refrain from judging the students' work as good or bad. Instead, direct and assess the class on their engagement with number 1, depth, number 2, clarity, number 3, brevity, Number 4, critical thinking, which I consider to be an ability to hold conflicting ideas with an eye for opening new possibilities. Number 5, investigation and interpretation. Number 6, use of observation, memory, and narrative. Number 7, discourage jargon, words like spatial complexity, and placing self at the center of presentations. For instance, the use of words I feel, I saw, I want. A small list of recommended reading and viewing, which you can go through if you want to. People can add to the list if they feel like. I also suggest that professional and formal letter writing, etc., should be taken up in 2014 ARC 7.4, which is Professional Practice 1. My further recommendation is to convert course 2014 ARC 4.6 Computer Applications in Architecture 2 into Architectural Communications 2, dedicated to architectural research and documentation. It is extremely important that we allocate separate time and resources towards this. Architectural community in India has not committed itself enough towards research since we adopted a new political order. Apart from extensive research under this course, VTU should take up a leadership role in initiating an ambitious national architecture archive. Accessible in the public realm, both online and offline formats and frameworks should be established. This initiative could include the research conducted in the architectural institutions as well as under organizations like INTAC. The research material for this course can be linked to the history of architecture and design studio exercises of the corresponding semesters. Apart from that, faculty must be encouraged and given resources to take up research projects to be an active part of this endeavor. Faculty who take up research should be allowed to tie up with the industry, as you call it, for specific projects to allow for flexibility and diverse inputs. These are very interesting and exciting times to practice architecture in India. With the advent of democracy, the architectural autonomy is dead. By revamping its architectural syllabus, VTU is boldly raising the question, what can architecture be? And how can architects and architectural students respond to the challenges of a place and of place making today? Despite all the gloom that is often portrayed, today architects in India want to participate in a wide spectrum of architectural activity, from building in cyclone and flood terrains, shaping mud houses and space stations, being the voice and guardians of a long and varied architectural history, and becoming a part of environmentally sensitive infrastructure work that India so urgently needs. These architects want to explore the depths and shifts in the landscape, not being content to merely rest on its surface. These are the new global players who are eager and want to be equipped to engage with monsoons, mud, mobility, memory, massing, and mathematics. They actively seek varied forms of knowledge and are willing to engage with complexity, which is not only inherent to India, but is a condition of contemporary life itself. Much of architectural education in India is based on Western models evolved from 19th century practices deeply embedded in industrialization, especially of the economies that aspired for dominance and wealth through colonization and wars. In stark contrast, agriculture has been India's most extensive pursuit, its biggest resource being its fertile terrain and the monsoon rains that move water deep inland every year. One of its significant geographical features is the rich coastline that stretches more than 7,500 kilometers and is home to over a quarter of its population. Shouldn't architectural education respond to this context? Addressing employability without addressing the issues of content and thinking skills will only produce architectural slaves. The industry may feel comfortable having architectural slaves at their disposal, but should educational institutions promote slavery? What architectural education in India urgently needs is a new manifesto that is based on architecture's transformative power. First is to move beyond mere visual engagements, formal building elements, especially of skins and styles, both ancient and modern, by deeper exploration of processes and events that inform and shape design. Next is to become a responsible voice for the creation and protection of the built environment. And the third is to create the language and tools to make architectural ideas relevant and accessible to public at large, and in turn create a design-aware public that takes pride in and feels responsible for its architectural continuum. In conclusion, a short story, actually more a joke than a story. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went on a camping trip. After sharing a meal, they pitched their tent under the stars and went to sleep. At around 3 a.m., Holmes woke Watson up and said, "Watson, look up at the sky and tell me what you see." Watson replied, "I see millions and millions of stars." Holmes said, "And what do you deduce from that?" Watson replied, "Astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets, of which some may have life on them. Astrologically, it tells me that Saturn is in Leo. Theologically, it tells me that creation is vast and we are small and insignificant. Horologically, it tells me that it's about 3 a.m. Meteorologically, it tells me that we will have a beautiful day tomorrow." "What does it tell you, Holmes?" Watson asks. Holmes replies, rather irritated, "Watson, you idiot. It means that somebody stole our tent." So, with training, while Sherlock Holmes would have made a good engineer, Dr. Watson would have made a terrific architect. Thank you.